Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Today's video is kind of one that's been kind of in the works for a little bit of time now, and I'm going to be comparing the Microsquirt and Holley Terminator X ECUs. I'm going to talk about a couple different things, but to kind of just start off with, this is a video I kind of jotted some notes down because I wanted to kind of collect my thoughts before I kind of just jumped in and gave my full, thorough opinions in regards to the system. So I actually took some notes down to kind of just compare and contrast, so that way I have an unbiased opinion really in regards to the systems. So if you see me looking down at my phone, it's because I have a couple screenshots here of some different notes I took, and just to make sure that I stick to the point, don't go off and ramble, because sometimes I tend to do that. So the Holley ECU, which for this kind of comparison, it's going to be in regards to the car in the background here, my 1987 Mustang GT, which is turbocharged. So I'm going to talk about both the Microsquirt kit for a Fox Body Mustang and the Holley Terminator X system for a Fox Body Mustang as well. So that way it's a good apples to apples comparison, because these systems are actually more similar than some people might think, and there are definitely pros and cons for both systems. So at the end of this, I'll definitely give you guys my conclusion and my recommendation and stuff along those lines here. But to kind of just start off with, so originally when I went to turbocharge my 1987 Mustang GT, originally I was going to keep the car mass air and just do a standard burn chip to accommodate for the power adder. And it was thanks to a buddy of mine that talked me into trying out this ECU. This is actually the Microsquirt kit here on the table I have right now, because as you guys know, I'm currently running the Holley Terminator system on my car. But my buddy actually gave me the inclination, because he's actually tuned these systems before, and he kind of went over it with me in detail, because I was a little skeptical about doing a standalone ECU, because I had pretty much little to no tuning knowledge. I understood the concept of a lot of it, but it's not something I was really comfortable taking on. But after he kind of showed me some more things about it, showed me how the software worked, I was ready to go into it. Plus the cost effectiveness of it I thought was a good value. So that's kind of the origin story of how I came to start using standalone ECUs. But, and again, this is in regards to standalone ECUs. I could talk about other things like Mode's Quarter Horse or the Fast System, Pimp XS, stuff along those lines. But I have little to no hands-on experience with those, minus Mode's Quarter Horse and Binary Editor. I've messed with that a little bit, especially if you're going to keep your stock computer. But I decided to kind of just stick with doing this system for a couple things. So the reason I started off with this system is mostly one of the best pros in regards to this system is that it's a super easy install. So to just start off with the Microsquirt ECU, we'll talk about the pros and cons, and then how both systems are similar, and yeah, we'll just go from there. Okay, so starting off with the Microsquirt ECU. So real quick, I like this kit because it is a very simple installation. As you can see here, this is the entire kit. So what it comes with for the Fox Body kit, you got the Microsquirt ECU right here, which is just a small little box, and you got this adapter harness, which connects directly to the factory EEC connector. It's even got the appropriate little bosses here of the plastics, that way you can only install it one way, you can't really mess it up. Has the threaded brass inserts, that way it literally just screws right into the factory place. And the way that you connect this to a laptop to tune it, it has an audio jack here, which if you have an old school laptop, you would have a serial connection right here with a audio jack output, or input here I guess you can say. But most current laptops these days don't have audio or serial ports on their computer, so that's why this one here has a serial to USB adapter. So any modern laptop computer, this is a cable you'll have to purchase. But essentially, to kind of go harp back on it, it's that's how you do your tuning, through that port. And your inputs and outputs are very limited. Again, a very simple system with the installation. And it has a 3-bar map sensor that comes with the kit, which is nice because that means that you're already set up for boost. Alright, so one of the pros with the Microsquirt system, and this doesn't necessarily pertain to just the Fox Body Mustang, that's kind of one of its pros. This ECU right here is a universal ECU, and with Tuner Studio, the proprietary software used to tune this system, it's more universal. That is, you can pretty much tune almost any platform with this system, as long as you do the correct connector and correct pinouts, and even on the back it tells you what the pinouts are. Which means that this is not just a one-trick pony. You can actually use this to tune anything from a standard 4-cylinder Miata all the way up to a V8 GMLS style engine. And having the 3-bar map, that means you can both run boost with this system or run it naturally aspirated. Another major pro to this system here is its price point. This kit right here, minus this serial to USB adapter, is going to run you right around $480. Now, there are a few things you do have to purchase alongside it to make it a full complete kit, but essentially the $480 gets you in the door. So we'll go ahead and talk about some of the cons, because that pretty much covers all the pros. Again, just kind of run down the list again real quick. It's a universal platform for tuning. You can use it on many different vehicle applications. It's not proprietary for just V8 applications. The price point, $480, gets you in the door with a full Fox Body kit. And the installation is super fast. Therefore, I had this kit, I believe, installed in probably less than 20 minutes. Just getting the old factory EEC out was more of a pain because of the large size of the box of the EEC. It comes with a 3-bar map sensor, and which is great because then it means it's set up for boost right out of the gate. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers all the pros. Now, let's talk about the cons. So yeah, you will have $480 invested right out of the gate. However, it's not complete because this system is a speed density system. Again, the 3-bar map sensor is what it uses to determine vacuum and boost and how to do its tuning. Therefore, in order to control all that, what it needs to see is air-fuel mixture to make its adjustments. So you do have to purchase a wideband separately to do the main work. It's one of the hearts in regards to the system, how it functions. So you will need to purchase a wideband. Those can vary on the market. You could pay $150 for one or $200 for one. So right there alone, you will have to purchase a wideband. So that already adds to the price tag of this kit. Also, in order to, if you have a modern laptop that does not have a serial port, you will need to pick up one of these cables. So add another $25 to your price tag. So all in all, in regards to the price tag, you're still pretty much under $1,000 for a system that's ready to go into your car and start tuning. Even though this is a pro, it's also part of a con. You gotta remember, Fox Body Mustangs, the most recent one was 1993, and they're getting old. And a lot of the electrical issues are starting to poke their ugly heads up. So even though this system does plug directly into the factory harness, if you have a wiring issue with your factory harness, this system's not going to band-aid it. You're still going to have that kind of issue because it is using that harness. So if you have any electrical issues with the factory harness, this is not going to be a fix for it. You'll still have to make that fix in the factory harness. So that is a con, or a possible con, I should say. Okay, another con, and this is going to kind of come back full circle in regards to price. Yes, the Tuner Studio software is a free download. However, to use all the to access all the functionality of the system in Tuner Studio, you do need to pay a registration fee. Granted, it's not too expensive, but again, it adds to the price tag of everything that you do to purchase this setup to go into your car. Generally, if you find that Tuner Studio registration on sale, you can pay anywhere from $40 up to, I believe, $80 for the Pro version or whatever version's out there right now. I believe at the time I paid about $60 for my registration. And also that goes the same with their data logger software. It's a separate download. Once you do download it, you can use certain functionality of it for free, but again, you have to pay a fee in order to unlock all the functionality. So again, adding more to the price tag. Okay, and these last two cons kind of go hand in hand with each other, but it's kind of good to talk about both of them in kind of separate entities. First off, probably one of the biggest cons for this system, why some people might scratch their head and kind of hold back from considering this system, is Tuner Studio itself. There is a steep learning curve in regards to, especially if you're the first time user or the first time self-tuner, there is a pretty steep learning curve in regards to the Tuner Studio software. And I don't want to put this lightly. Yes, you can figure it out, but it's going to test your patience, and you're going to want to sometimes just wish that you never did the system. You got to take a break from it every once in a while. You got to step away from it. And I believe it was I can't remember which YouTuber said it. It might have been a comment in one of the live streams that I watch and participate in sometimes. That someone mentioned that the reason they stayed away from the Microsquirt and Megasquirt is because they always saw people constantly working on it, even if the system's been on their vehicle for quite some time. And that kind of struck a chord with me because it's true. At least there's some truth to it. He's not wrong, I should say, or that username wasn't wrong. I found myself constantly opening up the software, checking things out, just because there was something in the back of my mind that didn't trust it. I don't know if that was warranted or not. There would be some times where I had to make a couple changes, even though the car's been running just fine on the system. A couple months would go by and there's something about it that I didn't like. I'd open up the software and I'd go back to it. So there is some truth to that statement. And so if you are willing to work with that, no problem. If it's something that you just kind of want to put in, tune once and be done with, this is not going to really be that kind of a system. It may work out better for you than it did me, but again, I'm just speaking from personal experience. Yes, every once in a while, I would open up the software, take a look at what's going on, and maybe make a few adjustments. Now, granted, there are not going to be as many adjustments per se as like when I first started with this software and with this system. And to be completely honest, it took me approximately a week to get my car at the very beginning stages. Once I got the system installed and started up for the first time, it took me approximately a week to get the car where it would fire up, hold idle, hold great idle, and have good drivability. And that wasn't just like a full 8-hour shift, I should say, in regards to getting it running in that week's time. It was probably messing with it for a couple hours, getting angry with it or getting impatient with it, shutting it down for a little while, and then come back the next day, work on it for another hour, maybe 2 hours, and then when things started rolling, I'd go out and drive the car for a couple hours at a time. But essentially just, when I got more and more comfortable with it, coming back to it and using it again. So I would just say that you are probably going to spend a good amount of your time near the beginning with the software and learning all the functionality and trying to determine what works, what doesn't work. And the software isn't as forgiving, especially if you make a lot of changes. Because there's so many options on Tuner Studio, and some of them you may not understand, and if you make a change in it, you don't know if it's going to help or hurt. So you'll need to do as much research as you can in regards to all the functionality of the Tuner Studio software. Again, you got to remember, this is a universal style ECU. It's not like, for example, the Holley software, which is made for pretty much domestic V8s, and everything you can kind of figure out what the stuff means. This has a lot more options on it in regards to, because you got to remember, it's got to be universal for a bunch of different vehicles. So there will be some options in Tuner Studio that you'll mess with, and some you won't even touch or never look at. So again, that's another major con. And this is going to kind of piggyback, this next con is going to piggyback off that point. Tuner support. Now, there are several tuners out there that will still tune Fox bodies on stock computers. However, they're getting less and less. For example, where I'm employed, Anderson Ford Motorsport, they no longer tune the factory EECs. And they no longer tune the factory EECs for 94, 95 cars that have, I should say, stock EECs. They'll still tune those cars, but it has to be a newer style system, standalone system. So tuner support. There are some people out there that will tune Megasquirt, Microsquirt at a aftermarket tuner shop, speed shop, so on and so forth. But there are quite a few out there that, just doing some research. Actually, when I originally put this in my car, one of the stipulations was, well, if I can't figure it out, is there someone I can lean on besides my buddy? Because my buddy's doing this on his free time. If there's someone I could pay to have this tuned in my area, how far do I have to travel to find someone that can actually knows this system and can tune it with a great deal of confidence? And I found very, very few. And this is also a system that Anderson was going to be tuning with for a little bit. Again, that's gone by the wayside now, but still, the tuning support, aftermarket tuning support with speed shops, places that have dyno tuning facilities, you got to be cautious about that, because if it's something that you can't figure out and you don't want to, have all this money invested in the system, even though it's not as expensive as a Holley, you want to make sure that you still have some support out there for it, if you can't figure it out, that is. So now there are great resources on the internet, of course, but again, the internet can't be there with you to hold your hand through everything. So you got to be able to take some of the ownership on yourself, and then also, if you can't figure it out, having a resource like a shop, or like I said, a speed shop or a dyno facility that can do dyno tuning for you, that is comfortable with handling the system. So make sure you do your research out there. So I'm going to consider that a little bit of a con, just because there's not as much support with those kind of shops, as much as I would say the Holley system. Okay, so now let's talk about the Holley Terminator X system. That's the system that is currently in my 87 Mustang. So we're going to go ahead and just start right off with the pros with the system. Kind of going off this system here, this system plugs directly into the factory harness, whereas the Holley comes with its a brand new harness. So one of the major pros with that is that you don't have to worry about gremlins and the old wiring harness, the old engine wiring harness, because it comes with its own brand new harness. So you're working with brand new stuff, getting a fresh start right out of the gate, which is excellent. And of course, it's the quality on these harnesses are very nice. Everything's clearly labeled for you, and the instructions are very, very thorough. So A+ on that, very good pro with the Holley Terminator X system. And something that I didn't really touch on, minus the learning curve on the Tuner Studio, but the self-learning function on the Holley Terminator X is much more intuitive and much easier to work with right out of the gate. So if it's something, this is definitely something for the first time user I think would appreciate more than trying to learn the system. So the self-learning function, one of the target things that the Holley Terminator X does is try to get you a nice clean idle right off the break, and which is really nice, especially when it's time to do your static timing check and verifying timing, because that's a very important step as well. But the way that the system functions is that it'll try and hunt a idle speed for you that you preset into the system, so therefore you don't have to try and keep the car running while you're trying to verify timing and trying to get everything else tuned in. So the self-learning function at closed loop setting is actually really, really nice. And of course, the learning functionality is already set up for you based on a target air fuel. So the self-learning function on the Holley Terminator X is really, really nice, especially for the first-time user. Really helps out tuners and stuff as well, because the system learns pretty fast in regards to finding your target air fuel. Another nice thing in regards to talking about the wiring harness is that both systems are speed density, and both use wideband O2s to help determine its air, to calculate its air fuel that it needs for you. The nice thing about the Holley system is that it comes with a wideband already pre-calibrated for the system, the appropriate wiring harnesses to plug directly into the new wiring harness that you got. So that's a nice big plus, that you don't have to go out and try and search for a wideband that will work with the system. It comes with one. Another really nice thing about the setup in regards to the Terminator X is that it already has a lot of different base calibrations already built into the system. So therefore, no matter what you are, if you're turbocharged, supercharged, naturally aspirated, it's not going to matter. You already have a base calibration in the system for you, and you can use that as your springboard to get yourself a better tune by using one of those calibrations. So you don't have to ever really start fresh. There's already something in there for you to kind of start with. Now granted, you can go ahead and use the software to build yourself a tune for you, not using any of the base maps. But for the first time user, or for someone that's wanting to alleviate half the time it takes to kind of build a map and build a tune, there's already base calibrations out there. So that's a nice feature in regards to the Terminator X. And speaking of the base calibrations, we're going to talk about the software. Now, of course, the Holley kit does come with a 3.5-inch touchscreen monitor. I consider that a glorified gauge. However, there is some minor tunability in regards to what you can do with the handheld. But the software is where the real tuning is done, I believe, for this system, or where you can really, fine-tune your vehicle. The nice thing is that for you right now out there, it is a free download, and there's no registration fee to unlock all the functionality. So that's really nice that you can just go ahead and download it, even if you haven't purchased the system. You can download it, play with the system, learn it before you even get it. So that's really nice. And also their data log software is also in that software download, which is also completely free of charge. And again, you don't have to pay a registration fee to unlock all the functionality of the data logger software. So that is an excellent piece, I believe, that kind of helps create some of the value that you're paying with that system. And I just briefly touched on it, but it does come with that 3.5-inch monitor. And it is cool, even if I call it a glorified gauge, it's because you can monitor all the different sensors that are plugged into the Holley. And it is really nice to be able to see. You essentially have an air fuel gauge right on the monitor, and you can monitor a bunch of other things. And you can also, hook up a little bit more options in regards to, in comparison here, you only have a couple wires for additional features for the Microsquirt. The Holley does come with a 4-wire pinout, additional pins that you can wire in. So if you want to wire in some additional items, you can, which is a little bit more of a nicer function. So there is a little bit more that you can add to the Holley system. But kind of piggybacking off the tuning ability, I mentioned how there wasn't much aftermarket tuning support, in-person support with the Microsquirt system. With the Holley system, since the Holley EFI has been out there for quite a while, it seems that there's a lot more tuning shops out there that will be able to handle a Holley system. So if it's even though the system is a little bit more intuitive to work with for the first-time user or for the self-tuner, the do-it-yourselfer, if it's something you can't figure out, or if it's something you want fine-tuned on a dyno, there are more shops out there. And Anderson Ford Motorsport, that's one of the proprietary softwares we use for tuning Fox bodies and other late model Fords that are using the system. Holley system seems to be more universally accepted at aftermarket dyno and tuning facilities. Okay, so yes, it may sound like that I went full in on the Terminator X and that I'm talking about how many pros there are. Yes, there are a little bit more pros versus the Microsquirt system, but there are a few cons that I do want to mention because sometimes again, I want to be honest and unbiased. That's why I made my notes here, because I was having a hard time just coming off the cuff with coming up with just like individual cons for the Terminator X, but after diving down into it, there are a few cons. I do want to share those with you guys. So the first one here, I already kind of mentioned it before, price. Your starting price point is already almost double what it's going to be, actually a little more than double what it's going to be for the Microsquirt. But the nice thing about the Microsquirt is that, of course, it has the 3-bar map that comes with it directly in the kit. The Holley system is set up for naturally aspirated right out of the box. It has that onboard 1-bar map sensor, which is good for naturally aspirated setups. But if you are boosted, which my car is, so in direct comparison, I needed to pick up an external 3-bar map sensor, which I picked up the Holley kit, and actually the kit that I went with is the one from Anderson Ford Motorsports. They're the boosted kit, and so therefore it's an additional cost. And on the same along the same lines. Talking about tuning for the do-it-yourselfer, if you don't want to tune through the 3.5-inch monitor, which I highly recommend that you don't, that you just actually do your tuning through the software, you will need an adapter cable to be able to plug into where the 3.5-inch monitor plugs into on the wiring harness to your laptop, which is an additional cost as well. So therefore your price tag is already extending on an already more expensive kit than the Microsquirt system. Okay, so this last point here is going to be, it is a con. It's not really much of a con. It's more of just something I want you guys to be aware of. The note that I made here is that the Holley system is more susceptible to corruption in tune files with spikes in voltage or loss in voltage. And I'll explain what I mean by that. And I'm going to use my car as an example. So what happened in my car was that after the night that I got my system installed in my car, I got it started. I moved it over to our dyno building so I could start, doing some pulls on it. And I was doing some idle tuning. And when I decided to do the idle tuning, I really wanted to have full control. So I hooked up the USB cable to the laptop, started tuning, and I noticed that my battery on my laptop was low. And when the laptop died, the car was still running, and I never got a chance to save the new tune. But every little change that I'd make before that, I was saving new tune files, kind of just like saving a Microsoft Word document, just a file save as, rename it something else, just something I can kind of retrace my steps with if I need to go back and look at something. So the laptop died, and the car was still running. car was still running good, and decided to call it quits for the night because it was getting kind of late. So I turned off the car, took the laptop home so I could charge it up, brought it back the next day, hooked it up, and I went to start the car. It started up, but then it would not run for anything. It was surging up and down. I was like, what the heck's going on? I was like, did something come unplugged? Maybe my idle air control motor wasn't plugged all the way in. And I was looking at my wideband gauge, and it said like 38 to 1. I'm like, no wonder the car doesn't want to run. It doesn't have any fuel. Well, looking at the back of my tailpipes, well, there was plenty of fuel, probably a lot of unburnt fuel getting thrown at the cylinders. The Holley is trying to compensate for it. So, kind of scratching our heads a little bit, thinking, well, what happened? What's the only changes that we made? And everything. Went ahead and pulled a plug out, saw that was black as night, and you know, it's like, okay, well, obviously the spark plugs are fouled, so we need to change out plugs, and then kind of just brainstorm, figure out what happened. So, well, the conclusion that we came to, me and a couple guys in the shop, the only thing that happened was that the laptop died during idle tuning, and even though the car was running great, even when the laptop died. And after I turned off the car, the Holley Terminator X didn't know what to do because it saw a loss in voltage in regards to the source that it was getting its tuning commands from. So what I decided to do was go ahead and just reload the previous tune file that I did save, because I didn't get a chance to save that last file. Again, my laptop died. So I reloaded that last tune and went to start the car, fired right up, idled great. So, when I say it's susceptible to corruption in the tune files, so that tune file was essentially lost and it was corrupted because it lost its source of voltage to the source it was getting its commands from. So, another example of that would be if your battery died. And something that probably the Holley technicians can tell you, you don't ever want to jump start your car. The only reason you probably ever would is if you're in a pinch and that's the only way you can get your car started. But what also could happen is that if the system sees a spike in voltage, it could also possibly corrupt that tune file as well. So just be wary of that. And if for whatever reason, if your battery is dead, I would highly suggest that if the only thing you got, if you don't have like a trickle charger or a low voltage charger, go ahead and just unplug the Terminator X main power supply from the bottom of your seat, or wherever it's mounted. Unplug that and then put your charger on, let it charge up fully, and then plug it in and fire up the car. Just because that way you don't have to worry about any possible increase or spikes in voltage. And then I actually put my car in trickle charger during the winter and stuff, and any low voltage charging system should be fine, but it's whenever you put like those fast charger systems, you could possibly see the extreme highs and lows, and that could possibly corrupt tune files. So that is a little bit of a con. It's just something that I think you guys just need to be aware of. It's not something I'd say that you should always constantly be thinking about that. That's always going to happen. It may not. It's just I got to see firsthand what happens if if something like that does occur. And you know, it's not a big deal. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, so the system, you gotta remember, it's Holley's budget-friendly system. Even though it's got a higher price tag than the Microsquirt, it is their lower end of the systems out there in the market. So it is a little more susceptible to issues like that, so just be wary of it. And then if you experience something, that's why you save multiple tune files to your ECU, and you save multiple to the global files. So that way, if something ever happens, just go ahead and reload the previous file. It should be golden. Okay. Alright, so I just rambled off a bunch of information here, and I know that this video is going to be long-winded, and I do apologize about that. I just hope that I can get my points across, and that there really isn't any biases here, and that you can kind of get the full picture of these systems. Because you got to remember, this is a pretty big investment for someone, because it's going to be tuning your vehicle. And, you know, there are pros and cons for both, but let's talk about real quick what both of these systems do. So you got to remember, these are both standalone ECUs. That means the previous EEC, the stock Ford computer, doesn't get used, okay? They both have a self-learn function. Even though the Holley gets a lot of high praise for its self-learning function, you got to remember, this system has a self-learning function too. The only difference is that you got to go in and enable this system to do the learning function, whereas the Terminator X is already set up to start learning right out of the box. Both systems do not use mass air anymore. Both systems are using speed density. Henceforth, why it comes with a 3-bar map for the 3-bar map for the Microsquirt, and why it has an onboard 1 bar from Holley. Both systems are complete do-it-yourself systems, so it's something that you can install yourself and start tuning yourself. So again, that's both what they do. Both use a wideband O2. The only difference is that the Holley comes with the Bosch 4.9 sensor already ready to go, that's already calibrated to the system, whereas you have to pick one for the Microsquirt ECU, and when you do purchase one, you'll have to sync that up to the system, so therefore it gives you an accurate air fuel reading. So they're both pretty much the low-level bare-bones systems to pretty much get your car going. Then you can add a few things along the road, but if you really want to step up and add a bunch more stuff that these systems can't support, then you'll be looking next level like a Holley HP or next level like a Microsquirt. Alrighty, so that's all my notes in regards to these systems. So I hope that I got my point across in regards to what these systems do and what the pros and cons are for both these systems. Now, what I want to stress, what I really want to stress here is that yes, this system here may have a very attractive price point, but guys, I just can't stress this enough. You're going to be probably on the system learning it and tuning your vehicle for the first, just to get the idle down and get the startup down. You're going to be spending a considerable amount of time in the tuning stages of the system right at the beginning with those settings, and it's going to take you some time. It's not something that you can just, even if someone gives you a tune, every car is going to be different, every car is going to be acting a little different, and therefore there's not a one-size-fits-all for that. So I can't stress that enough with this system. However, I know it makes it sound like I'm dogging this thing. I'm not, because you guys got to remember, I've had this system on my car for a couple years, and my car has been running good. You've seen it in several of my videos. Car wouldn't surge at idle. Car would run great. It'd make power. So there's just the learning curve is probably going to be the biggest thing that's going to detract people from purchasing this kit. So I just want to point that out that yes, there is a steep learning curve. And I'm not going to lie to you about that. And that's one of the things that will probably help you in the long run. If you do learn the system, you can actually tune this thing pretty darn well. So, now with the Holley Terminator X. The Holley Terminator X is something I wish existed for a Fox Body Mustang back when I installed this. You guys got to remember, this system's still pretty fresh. Even though it's been out for a while, it's still pretty fresh. It didn't exist the time that I went and installed this into my car. So having that system now, it's like having this but turned up like 3 notches. The self-learning function capability and the tuning capability and the easy understanding of what all these things do in regards to the software and just the system in general, it just makes a whole lot of sense to me. And even though the installation is more involved, because again, you have a whole new wiring harness, whereas this uses the existing one, it just makes things so much easier to work with and much less stressful. Now granted, there's still a learning curve in regards to the Holley software, but I'd say the learning curve is not nearly as steep, and the aftermarket support, the internet support and aftermarket tuning support from speed shops and tuning facilities, you know, the Holley system, it would be the way to go. I think the Holley system is the wave of the future, and I can only see Holley really improving it from here on out. I still think there is a place for this system. Again, this is what I used on my car for the last couple of years, and if the Holley system actually, and to be completely frank with you guys, if the Holley system wasn't going to work out, if my car just didn't like it and I didn't, 100% believe in it, I was going to throw this thing back in my car so that I can at least know that it's running. But I don't see a need for this anymore because I am sold. I am 100% sold on the Holley Terminator X. And it's a system that, again, I wish existed back before I installed this, because I would have, even though my budget was pretty low for tuning, because I extended a lot more money than I wanted to on the turbo system, it just happened to sometimes shake out that way. And I am glad that it ended up working out this way, because I got to learn a lot with this, and it's made my tuning experience with the Holley that much sweeter. So I am not going to have a need for this anymore. I really wish the Holley did exist, because I would have found a way to save up the $1,300 price tag to get it in there, which at the time was probably cheaper, because as you guys know, everything's just going up in price right now. So if you have the means, if you can save up the money, go ahead and just make the jump to the Holley Terminator X system. And if it's something that it's just not feasible for you, but you do want to get an aftermarket standalone ECU, Microsquirt is a good way to go. Okay, I know I rambled enough, and you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk. If you stuck around to the end of the video here, good on you. I appreciate it so much. But that's pretty much where we're going to leave it off here. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll definitely see you in the next video.